Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the News Brief. Today we're going to summarize things that have been happening in Ukraine and surrounding Ukraine in the past little while. We're also gonna, explore a little conspiracy theory that has been flooding the internet. And of course, we're gonna discuss it together in the comments so you don't have to suffer alone and I don't have to suffer alone. So please, if you have something to say, do not hesitate to do so down below. Let's go. Well, the internet has been flooded, and I mean flooded, with memes, videos, trolls, comments, speculations about Donald Trump, because he hasn't really been seen in the public eye since August 26th. There have been pictures that have been posted. There have been Truth Social posts that have been posted. Now, lots of people online consider those posts being written by AI. Lots of people online also consider those pictures to be either AI generated or just they think something's off with them. Some of those pictures appear to actually have been old. But I'm not here to speculate and theorize on what's going on with Donald Trump. What I am here to do, though, is to laugh at the fact that there are so many memes referring back to James Franco and Kim Jong-un, in the movie, where the former had to shake the latter's hand in order to poison him. And people are pointing out that Trump and Putin shook hands, and we all know that Putin and Novichok are quite best friends. If you don't know what Novichok is, it's a neuro agent that basically kills you and poisons you. And so there have been a lot of, obviously, situations with Russia using that in order to assassinate political opponents and, friends and foes. So that has been quite funny to observe because the most of the world seems to know exactly how evil Putin and Russia are. However, when it comes to Ukraine, for some reason, everyone conveniently forgets. So millions of people online are willing to assume that Putin poisoned Donald Trump because they know exactly what methods Russia is using. But the second that it comes to Ukraine and understanding that there is no just peace on Putin's terms, people are like, what do you mean? Just make an agreement. So that was a little telltale here for you, just so you can make your own conclusions and see what it is that we Ukrainians are seeing and the things that we are driven crazy by. Because somehow, in one situation, it's very evident who the bad guy might be. And in the other situation, we just close our eyes. Anyhow, we're going to move on to some much better news now, Ukrainian military successes in the Donetsk region specifically. There have been a lot of settlements that the Ukrainian military has liberated. Novoekonomichne was liberated on August 31st by 425th Assault Regiment Skela, and also right after it was Udachne. Total area regained is 16 square kilometers, including Kotline, Shevchenkova, and others. Russian losses in one day included 800 soldiers, 1 tank, and 53 artillery systems. Frontline clashes reported 172 engagements, and Russian offensive slowed down by 18% in August, summer campaign deemed a failure, according to ISW. Now, why am I telling you this? That's because 16 square kilometers is about as much area as Russia gains in half a year, and Ukraine liberated that back in one day. When people talk about the war being won by Russia or how Ukraine is losing, they constantly just gloss over the fact that Russia was able to only gain 1% of territory in the past year. There was supposed to be a massive summer offensive campaign from Russia, and we haven't seen any of it. There was nothing of sorts. Yes, there were some very, very dangerous and very robust clashes at the front line this summer, and there was a lot going on. Lots of Ukrainian soldiers were injured. It was difficult, but there was not some major offensive campaign. Russia did not gain almost any new territory, and in the places where Russia gained, Ukraine took away in other places. So in reality, when you're being told that Ukraine is losing this war and Ukraine can't fight this war, Ukraine has been fighting this war. Ukraine has been repelling Russian attacks, and Ukraine has been liberating settlements back. The thing is, we need resources. We need weapons. We need weapons to be able to not just liberate a village or 2 or 3 once in a while. We need resources in order to push through and create our own massive offensive campaigns. Now, in more bad news for Russia, they have some economic losses in oil and gas fields. Net profit for H1 2025 fell by 50.4% to 1.2 trillion rubles. Still a huge amount, but 45% of companies in the sector operating at a loss, 750 billion ruble loss to be exact. Rosneft, one of Russia's main companies in the field, their profit dropped 68% from 773 to 245 billion rubles. Causes? Ural's crude price drop from $70 to $58, so that's minus 13% net. Ruble strengthening. G7 and EU sanctions, namely embargo and shadow fleet. Ukrainian strikes on refineries, which that resulted in 59% reduction in processing. Overall refinery output is down 10% due to drone attacks. So again, I'm going to circle back a little bit to when I was saying that you're being told Russia is winning the war and Ukraine is losing. Somehow Ukraine is able to strike Russian refineries to the point where Ukraine is able to decrease Russian processing of crude oil by 59%. That is huge. Ukraine has maybe not been showing some crazy military movie-like successes on the battlefield that we've seen in Kharkiv and Kherson a couple of years ago, which is exactly what people expect a show in order to think that something is being won. But behind the enemy lines and behind the battlefield, Ukraine has been pulling a lot of weight and has been conducting some very successful campaigns. We can go back to the drones that emerged from a Russian truck a couple of months ago. We can also come back to the fact that drones in general have been destroying Russia's processing powers, and that's a huge hit on their market, which is why it's not Ukraine who's losing. Ukraine is actually coming up with some very interesting warfare tactics in order to drain Russia from its ability to pay for the war. SCO Summit in Tianjin, August 31st to September 1st, is the largest summit in history, 25th edition, over 20 leaders, Xi, Putin, Modi, Lukashenko, Pashinyan, etc. So SCO is basically Russia's knockoff TJ Maxx, bottom shelf NATO. And we have probably all seen a picture by this point of Modi and Putin sitting in a vehicle and reading the Economist's article about Trump. There are, again, so many memes of that online. The declaration on the summits was a 20-page statement against poverty, terror, child abduction. Poverty, terror, child abduction, all things that are happening in Russia that Russia is doing, aggression and invasions. No mention of Russia's war in Ukraine, of course, because why? That would be a little, counterintuitive for the subject, wouldn't it? Participants were China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, India, Pakistan, Iran, Belarus, Armenia applied. Key statements that we took out from that summit. Xi Jinping against hegemony, Cold War, intimidation, hint at US and Taiwan. And interestingly, they were talking about, changing things so that the world order wouldn't bully them. Yeah, the world order meaning laws and regulations and having to answer for crimes and having to, be punished for your wrongdoings. The world order that we have now, the one that's bullying China for supplying drone parts and helping Russia, and the one that's bullying Russia for killing people and committing terror and invading a different country. Yeah, that world order. Putin said crisis in Ukraine stems from a Western-backed coup. Yeah, again, we're there again. Western-backed coup. So millions of Ukrainians protesting against the president who promised them a European future turned around behind their backs and decided to go fraternize with Russia. Yeah, Western-backed coup because we here have no agency. Modi said India stands shoulder to shoulder with Russia. Well, that should tell you everything you need to know about Narendra Modi and his morality and how he views the world and what he sees as right or wrong. SCO is not an alliance. Too many authoritarian regimes. SCO is trying to say that they're not an alliance and that there are too many authoritarian regimes in the world. All of them are pretty much gathered at SEO summit, except for North Korea, aren't they? And Russia and China have a gas deal, obviously, which is also a big thing on the list of subjects today. Gazprom and CNPC signed a 30-year contract. It's called Power of Siberia 2. I'm surprised it's not called the Victory of Siberia 2, Friendship or something like that, because those are Soviet names that Russia loves using. They have chocolates named Victory, they have cars named Victory, they have apartment complexes named Victory, they have theaters named Victory, they have chips named Victory, various other items of food, soda and stuff. I'm surprised this gas deal is not called Victory. Anyhow, 50 BCM a year will be transferred to China via Mongolia and Soyuz Vostok. Supply increase. Siberia 1. So this is a huge supply increase. Well, not huge. Well, yeah, it is huge because Siberia 1 was supplying from 38 to 44 BCM a year. Now, the cost of this deal is $13.6 billion, and that's in dollars, and the launch is expected from 2030. So China right now imports only 18% of Europe's peak demand. So right now, it's still not compensating for what Russia was making while having gas deals with Europe and while being the gas station for Europe. And the price is also way lower than European rates. Miller quoted, "The largest and most capital-intense gas project in the world." The context here is that Russia stabilizes its budget, but also increases its dependency on China. While Russia and Russian sympathizers online may be applauding this deal and may be celebrating, this is actually not as good as it seems, because what this deal means in reality is that Russia is getting more and more dependent on China. And China is the one that's going to be calling the shots. Russia is losing its own agency and its own ability to make decisions for itself. So we're going to see more and more that Putin is going to have to consider what Xi is saying and what China wants and what China's interests are. And he's going to have to bend over for them. Because at this point, China is saving Russia's economy, and both Russia and China know that. And that's all I have for you for today. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this brief, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, turn on all of your notifications. Also, send this video to a friend, give it a like, and of course, leave a comment if you have something to say. I read all of them. Sometimes I try to respond, but no, I always hear your voices. Till next time.